CBC's Chris Reyes is tracking the developments for us, and she joins us from our bureau at the United Nations. So, Chris, walk us through what we know right now about this second wave of explosions today.
Well, Jacqueline, I'll tell you this, the scale of these attacks could be seen from Beirut's skyline with smoke rising from these explosions, a really powerful image. There's also ground footage of smoke coming from buildings. You see all of these photos that we're getting into our newsroom of these detonated communication devices. Another witness said that there was an explosion near the funeral of those killed from Tuesday's pager attack. As you can imagine, this has made for scenes of chaos all over Lebanon, with dozens of ambulances deployed. The country's health ministry updating the number of those killed, 14 in total now, with more than 450 injured in this second wave of attacks, using communication devices that belonged to Hezbollah members. This is a group, Jacqueline, that Israel has called a part of Iran's axis of evil. The attacks come as tensions have been escalating between the two countries, and with Israel's defense minister basically saying that they are now opening a new phase in this war that shifts the focus to the north. Hezbollah has issued a statement today saying that they will retaliate as a result of these attacks, in addition to continuing the fighting at the border. The Lebanese government has called the attacks criminal Israeli aggression. Now, Israel has been moving more troops to its border with Lebanon. And earlier this afternoon, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to the media. He did not comment on the attacks, but did say this about the Israeli residents who have been evacuated from the area in recent months of fighting. He said, "I have said it before, we will return the citizens of the north to their homes in security, and that is exactly what we're going to do." We've heard these kinds of statements from Prime Minister Netanyahu in the past, that he is wanting to fight this war to the very end to secure the people of Israel.
And Chris, what has been the wider reaction to what's happened over these past couple of days?
I mean, no surprise here that this is sending even more alarm bells through the international community that has been warning of a broader regional war since October 7th. We've heard from brokers and mediators that this is why the ceasefire deal was so important to bring down the temperature in the region. There have been countless meetings here at the United Nations on this, Jacqueline. And now with these attacks, the exact opposite has happened. The temperature has actually gone up. This is a region that can't afford to be any more on edge, and they have been in the last few months. Have a listen to what UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said about these attacks.
The logic of making all these devices explode is to do it as a preemptive strike before a major military operation. So, as important as the event in itself is the indication that this event confirms that there is a serious risk of a dramatic escalation in Lebanon, and everything must be done to avoid that escalation.
And I should tell you, Jacqueline, the Secretary General also criticized the use of civilian devices like pagers and walkie-talkies in these attacks. Now, U.S. officials are saying that they were given a heads up on the attack, but not details. That is what several media reports are saying. However, Secretary of State Antony Blinken had something different to say. Have a listen to what he said.
The United States did not know about, nor was it involved in these incidents, and we're still gathering the information and gathering the facts. Broadly speaking, we've been very clear, and we remain very clear, about the importance of all parties avoiding any steps that could further escalate the conflict that we're trying to resolve.
And Jacqueline, that's exactly what we expect to hear when a Security Council meeting takes place here at the United Nations to discuss these attacks. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a region that really can't afford to be any more on edge than they have been in the last few months and since October 7th. And, you know, in addition to the death and destruction, the aftermath of these attacks is that you have an entire world just waiting for what happens next.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks so much for the latest on this. That's CBC's Chris Reyes at the United Nations.
Okay, let's turn now to Andrew Miller. He's a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Israeli-Palestinian Affairs. He's now a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Mr. Miller, very good to have you back on the show. Thank you for making time.
Thanks, Natasha.
Let's begin with where things stand today. Reports of at least 3 more people killed as a result of exploding devices. This time around, it's walkie-talkies. Yesterday, thousands injured and 12 killed because of exploding pagers. Hezbollah says Israel did it. Israel is not commenting. What is your read of what's going on here?
It's hard to identify who other than Israel would have both the technical capacity as well as the interest in carrying out this attack, utilizing pagers and now walkie-talkie devices today. I think the U.S. government has capacity to do it as well, but the administration has been very clear that an escalation between Israel and Hezbollah would be counterproductive for everyone involved. The United States will continue to protect Israel and to support their defense, but the expansion of the war in Gaza to other fronts would produce cataclysmic consequences for the United States as well as our regional partners and allies.
I want to be totally transparent with the audience. We don't know if Israel is behind this. That is what so much of the reporting seems to indicate. It's what many experts such as yourself are also indicating. So if we move forward with that presumption that Israel was behind this, what did they stand to gain when there's already so much warfare happening that they are participating in?
I think there are 3 potential explanations for why they did this. And it's unclear as of yet what the correct explanation is. One of them is that they were concerned Hezbollah was about to learn that Israel had smuggled this technology or smuggled these explosives into the equipment, and they wanted to use the devices before Hezbollah could take actions to dismantle them. The second possibility is that these are the first steps in a broader offensive that Israel plans to conduct in Lebanon, whether through a more extensive aerial campaign and or a ground invasion. And the third possibility is that this is the alternative to a ground invasion. There is extraordinary pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu from the security establishment and from Israelis who live in northern Israel and have been forced to leave their homes to seek shelter in other parts of the country to help them return home. Prime Minister Netanyahu, by all accounts, has not been particularly eager to expand the war to Lebanon in light of a desire to focus on Gaza and the risk of casualties in a confrontation with Hezbollah, but it's really uncertain as to whether this is intended to avert an immediate war or if this is the first indications that one is about to erupt.
Have we ever seen a coordinated attack or plan like this before with simultaneous devices blowing up at the same time?
Not devices. We have seen Israel, we have seen other countries with very sophisticated intelligence apparatuses detonate explosives at the same time. Israel used to do this through letters, through packages that were sent through the mail and were timed to go off at roughly the same moment as they arrived at individuals' desks. And they did this to uneven success in Lebanon, in Syria, in Egypt, decades ago in an earlier phase in Israel's history. But in terms of using communication devices, in terms of using pagers, walkie-talkies, or cell phones, I'm not aware of any precedent, and certainly not aware of a precedent at this scale.
Let's talk about Hezbollah. They have acknowledged this is a major blow to their communications, to their morale, and now they're vowing retaliation. What do you anticipate we'll see on that front?
I think we should be very concerned that Hezbollah's response could be much more aggressive than we've seen up to date. And Hezbollah has launched hundreds, and I think at this point, thousands of rockets and missiles at Israel, but they haven't been designed to maximize casualties. This type of attack, because it is unprecedented, invites the question as to whether Hezbollah's response will be equally unprecedented. Now, because of the disruption to communications, it may be more difficult for Hezbollah to launch any type of operation in the next few days as they try to restore their connectivity. But once they do so, you could see anything from a continuation of the status quo, which is troubling but ultimately manageable, or you could see this being the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back. I think Iran will have an important influence on whatever decision is made. Hezbollah makes its own decisions, but it tends to coordinate closely with Iran. Up until this point, neither Hezbollah nor Iran wanted a full-scale war throughout the region that could potentially involve the United States. They were willing to step up to the line, but they didn't want it to get completely out of control. There is a possibility that this could change that calculus. It's by no means a certainty, but this is clearly an escalatory act. And as with any escalation, it's very difficult to predict what the net effect is going to be and where that escalatory cycle will stop if it does indeed stop.
Andrew, President Joe Biden has come out saying things need to calm down. We cannot allow this warfare to escalate. We cannot afford tensions to escalate. We heard Secretary of State Antony Blinken say the same thing. Just a short while ago, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, saying that everybody in an international position or in a sort of global policing position is saying the same thing. Let's tone it down. Let's calm it down. But that is not what we're seeing on the ground. Is the international community completely helpless in this situation to try and temper what could lead to much, much greater loss of life?
The international community certainly isn't helpless. If Israel and/or Hezbollah are determined to fight a war, they will fight a war. But short of their being committed to that pathway, there are other ways to influence both of the actors. The United States has the most influence over Israel, and with President Biden, Secretary Blinken, and others calling for calm, they could exert greater pressure on Israel and consider some steps regarding the level of support that the United States would provide to Israel if a war erupted. You know, the message that has been communicated is we will obviously support Israel's security. They could introduce a caveat regarding whether Israel starts the war or is responding to an external attack. In terms of Hezbollah, the U.S. has less direct influence, but the international community does. And as I mentioned, Iran does. There are countries throughout the region. There are countries throughout the world, including China, which does not want a regional conflict in the Middle East, as it could disrupt oil shipments and other commercial activity. There's more the international community could do to try to restrain Hezbollah, as well as the United States restraining Israel. I haven't seen that, though. There seems to be either an unwillingness to use the tools that are available, or in the case of China, unfortunately, an almost a willingness to allow this to unfold because it's embarrassing for the United States, which I think is a major strategic miscalculation on Beijing's part.
Okay. I look forward to us speaking again. Andrew Miller, always good to have your insights. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Natasha.